Good morning.
Good morning.
How great it is to be together in the Spirit of Jesus Christ. I am so honored to have had Dana be so brave to do her job today because, the first time you do something, and the second and the third in church in front of people, you get a little nervous. And I do too, Dana, but it was wonderful. And that song, that's my favorite song. It really is. I remember singing that in Sunday school. The teacher would be tapping her foot like that. So what a way to start. So I just have a simple message today to bring to you. But it has really done something to me this week in preparing it. So, God always gives to you what you need to learn. So I started reading The Prodigal Son, and I read it out of every Bible I've got. Believe me, I think I have 8 Bibles at home, because every time I see a different one, I think I need it. And it's not about how many Bibles you had. It's about if you open one up. So I must say that I think there's one yet that I haven't opened up, but ministers do that. We kind of go wacky over Bibles. But the most quoted parable in the Bible is the story about the prodigal son and his older brother and his father. And as I began to read this story, I wondered, where am I in all this? First of all, why wasn't it a prodigal daughter? Because I have been one. So I thought, why wasn't it about a daughter? Well, it is, Ruthann. Just read a little further. Just read a little further. And I kept reading it over and over. And I realized it's about family relationships, for one thing. I don't think there's a person in this room that has not experienced at least one of these characters in your life. And it's okay. It's okay that we bring this story to you to light, I wanted to bring it alive to you. I'm going to start looking at the story from my viewpoint. So if you don't like it, that's okay. I'm not going to tell you about how it affected me too much, because it really did affect me. First, who do you identify in this story? A brief look at this story says it's about hurt feelings, selfishness, pride, personal perceptions, and most of all, the greatest lesson from this story is forgiveness. You say forgiveness? I didn't get that when I read it. But when you open your Bible to Luke chapter 15, 11 through 32, if you want to go home and reread this story, or better yet, this today is just like what they do for movies now. What do they call those little snips? A trailer. This is just a trailer in your life of how you can pick this parable apart and have it be meaningful for you. At least I hope so. This story opens with the younger son, and he's just wild. One of those wild kids, wild teenagers. Of course, none of you ever had a wild child. But believe me, I have. So this kid was a dreamer. He could see himself with kings and dancing girls and beautiful houses and lots of parties and wine, and he just wanted to experience it now. He didn't want to wait until the father wanted to give it to him. He wanted it now. Does it sound familiar? Okay, so, and I think his father wanted to please him. so much that he thought, oh, well, what's the difference? I'll just give him his inheritance now. And he'll be gone, in a few days. And maybe he thought, if you love something or someone so much that you're willing to give them away, perhaps they'll come back to you. Have you ever heard that statement? So I think he may have, out of the graciousness of his love for this son, he decided, well, he would go ahead and give it to him, and maybe he'll learn a lesson from this. Well, perhaps he thought his son could do no wrong. Ooh, that's a hard one. Sometimes as parents we have to look at that and think, ooh, how does this affect me? Okay, so that's it. But then he might have also thought, the older son's not going to like this. Boy, he's really going to be mad when he finds out that I've given the inheritance to the younger one. And I didn't give the other sons, I just gave the portion that was due to the son that wants to go away. So this young man took off with money in his pocket, jingling, and he was so excited. Oh, this is going to be so much fun. I can't wait to get out there in that big city and live the life. But it doesn't always happen that way, does it? Most generally, when the son goes away, or the daughter, in a situation like that, things don't go so well. Now, is God not with them? Of course God is with them. Trying to say, get over here, learn this lesson. But merrily they go, or we go on our way saying, oh, it's just for a little while, and then I'll go back home. Just for a little while. And then, I'll still have some money. Well, you went through the money pretty fast. So he thought, I'm hungry. I'm not having anything to eat. And I don't know what I'm going to do. And for this little Jewish boy to finally decide that he had to go to a farmer and ask him if he had any work for him. And the farmer said, yes, you can feed the pigs with the pods. Can you imagine? Can you imagine how he felt? Because he wasn't supposed to eat pork, or he wasn't supposed to really be around pork. But he was hungry. And so he went ahead and fed the pigs. And then he got to thinking, wonder what Dad's doing at home. Wonder what they're having for supper tonight. I bet it's macaroni and cheese. Oh, I just want to go back home. So he starts out on his way home, so hungry for the things he remembers. Even though he doesn't realize it, he is really hungry for God. He is really hungry to go back and feel the presence of the Lord with him, as he did in those days when he was a little child. It was so easy then, but now it's not so easy. And will my Father take me back? He's thinking, what's going to, or will he just tell me to go? Or what is going to happen to me? So he trots on his way, and he didn't have a Care Bear. So he had to go on by himself back home. Well, the older son was out in the fields working just like he always did every day. He pleased his father every day. He worked so hard. He was always the good one, But in his heart and in his mind, he was beginning to be very, very naughty, for he was resenting that younger brother. How come he got to go away and I had to stay home and take care of Dad? You know, I've always been there for my dad, but right now I'm not so sure what's going on. And he wasn't happy either. And maybe, perhaps, this was maybe the son that needed a little more help than the younger son, because he was doing so much of the murmuring about, why did God make me stay here, and why did this happen, and why do I have to do that? And now, as he's walking home, he's thinking, I'll bet you he'll come back. Well, sure enough, here comes the younger son walking up the path, the same path that the older son will take coming from the fields, and trying to make up his mind, what am I going to say? What am I going to say to Dad? I don't know what to say. But there was a little spark within him that said, God will tell me. God will tell me. And nobody was around, but he just knew he would know what to say. So the father was grieving a lot. I don't know if any of you have ever had a teenager or a child run away, but what a horrible feeling that must be. I know I had a friend one time that called me and said her child had ran away and they didn't know where she was. I'm not going to say which it was. And would I come over and help her pray and call Silent Unity, who has 24-hour prayer? And I said, sure. So went over and we prayed. And I said, just visualize this person walking back home. Sorrowful, learned a lesson, ready to see you. A couple days later, we got a phone call. I had called Silent Unity where they pray. Got a phone call that this person was in St. Louis, Missouri. Unity Village is only on down the road a little while. And a truck driver had picked them up in Cincinnati, took them all the way to St. Louis, Missouri in the same truck. They didn't have to get out and dump. He dropped them off at a restaurant, paid for their breakfast, called the police, and the police came and got these teenagers, and they were home the next day. Prayer works. Prayer works. And so that was that prodigal child was taken care of. So like that, this younger child's walking home, and his dad's out there looking and looking, looking and looking, and saying to himself, he will come home. Oh God, please bring him home. Please, God, I need him. I need him to know that I love him and that it doesn't matter. He can be here. So pretty soon there was a dark figure. And the father went running, and he had on his robe and his ring, and he was just so excited, and he had sandals that he had his service bring, so because he figured his son would be barefoot. Now, isn't it interesting that the ring means prosperity? The robe put around him as the owner of this beautiful farmland says he had authority, and he took off the robe and gave it to his son, put it around him, took his ring off and gave it to his son, and then he took off his sandals and gave them to his son. Now the sandals and the feet represent in our lives understanding. And so not only did he give him these material things, but he gave him the presence of God in his life, knowing that Jesus Christ was with him. knowing that the Lord was with him. And so he was able to welcome him with open arms. Now here comes the older brother. He's hearing the music in this house, and he's wondering what's going on. And he asked one of his neighbors, what's going on in my house? It sounds terrible. What's happening? And he says, haven't you heard? Haven't you understood that your brother is back and your father has greeted him and they're having the fatted calf to eat and they're having a wonderful party? And he said, oh, well, aren't you going in? You know, the older son is supposed to be the greeter and bless everyone that comes to the party and be a part of this ceremony. And what are you going to do? And he said, I am not going to speak to my father or my brother. Wonder what this young man needs to learn. I wonder what he was truly feeling in his heart. You know, sometimes we say we're going to be forgiving. But are we really? Are we really? Do we let it come back up and bother us like this prodigal son and his older brother? So here they are traveling along this road, and there's the young son having a good time in the party, and the older son outside thinking, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I'm not sure what he did. I got to get over here where I'm at. But so all he had to do was go to the party, be nice, serve the wine, speak to his father. But no, he had to bring up that thing about the will. You know, it already had been probated. The younger son had gotten nothing. The younger son gets nothing now because he already had received it. The elder son wanted it now, but if he took it, then their father would be homeless, for he would have nothing. You know, and it really doesn't say how it went. No longer is he loving to his father, and he says he will never enter into a relationship again with his brother. How about that? Have we ever heard words like that? I have in my own family, and it hurts. It really, really hurts. Because coming from a mother that has heard that, it makes it sad to know that the children she had, she can't help it if they're not following the Lord. She'll pray for them, and that's what the only thing that we can do. For the Father was full of forgiveness. The Father was full of forgiveness. It's hard to surrender. It's hard to let go. It's hard to say, I don't know what to do about this situation. But how much better it is to let them go, to follow the discipline of renunciation. They have to do the forgiving. We can. We can with someone personally that we've offended, but we cannot do the forgiving for another person. And that seems hard, but we can pray. You know, we don't have to agree on anything to be kind to one another. Think about that. We don't have to agree on anything, religion, politics, whatever it is, but we can be kind. We can be kind to each other. I'd like to share with you, Thomas Merton is a wonderful teacher and Catholic saints I could think of now or will be one day. But I was interested this past 2 days listening to the Pope. And when I was a little girl, I thought I wanted to be Catholic because I loved all the things the Catholics did, wear crosses and beautiful robes, and I thought that's what it was all about. But it's not about that. It's about how close we are to the very presence of God within our prayer time. And you can pray daily. You can pray daily all day long, like some of the saints in the Catholic Church have done, and some of the other saints. But I'd like to end with this one little word. It is the sorrow of fathers' hearts from generation to generation that sons and daughters leave home. Not that they grow up and find a girlfriend or a boyfriend and get married. Not that they grow up and move out to live on their own, but rather that they leave the spiritual home of God's grace. That they leave the spiritual household of God's covenant. That they leave the household where God has called them his beloved. Beloveds, we are all sons and daughters of the Most High. Thank you.